Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, who told me that he's got a question for me.
Question. You're the tiebreaker. All right. So I was talking on the radio. Good morning, by the way. I was talking.
Morning.
Good Eastern. Good afternoon to the East Coasters who are watching and talking. It's easy.
You were doing your radio show today.
I was. I was discussing the two kings that I've met. King
Okay.
James, that I've met and spent time with, and King Charles. When he was Prince Charles, I spent a lovely evening randomly drinking champagne when I was a young newspaper reporter. Who is more famous?
King Charles? Wait, yeah. You can't just like skip over this. How did that happen?
So I worked for a guy. So I was I was at University of Missouri journalism school. I went to England on a you go for a semester abroad. I got a job at the Express newspaper, which is somewhere between a real newspaper and the newspapers that had naked women on the third page. In the middle.
Okay.
Tabloid, but no pictures. And I worked for a gossip columnist who just was awesome and just sent me to drink with random famous people from the UK all the time. And one of those people was, oh my God, what's her name? Who's the actress from Primary Colors and Love Actually, who gets cheated on Love Actually by the husband? Oh my God, I'm totally drawing a blank.
I've never seen Love Actually.
What? Okay, that's a whole other podcast sometime. Yeah. So basically, she introduced me to Prince Charles.
All right. Okay.
Oh my God, that is mind-blowing. She introduced me to Prince Charles. He came over. Emma Thompson, thank you. I spent a night with Emma Thompson, hanging out. He came over. We talked. We drank champagne. They ate caviar. I was like 20. I didn't know what I was doing. I was in a suit. Didn't fit. So he was really charming. Here's my question. He looked like a doofus from 20 feet away. And I also covered Bill Clinton back in the day. Both those guys had this overwhelming physical charm that when you got within the sphere of their, I guess if you're told you're God's chosen king of the people, whatever, it works. Here's my question. Who's more famous worldwide? King Charles or King James?
Tough one. I'm going to go LeBron.
Really? Okay.
I'm going to go LeBron. Wow. Basketball being the second biggest sport globally is a big deal, and he's arguably the greatest player of all time. King Charles, as political figures, the monarchy has been diminished. So fair. Yeah, I think, and like LeBron, just as like a pop culture figure, I think has greater global reach too. Which you went with Charles?
Yeah, I thought it might be Charles, but my producer was on your side, and I told him on there, I'm like, I'm going to ask John to tiebreaker this thing. Interesting. Okay.
Producer Aaron, you want to weigh in here? What on Charles versus LeBron?
Worldwide,
obviously. I wonder which way he's going to go LeBron.
He was going to go LeBron. Okay.
Yeah, he was always going to go LeBron.
Yeah, I met him. Okay, he was also like, he introduced himself as, I don't remember, like, hello. And I go, oh, Bill Ryder. He was so awkward. I put my hand down. Yeah, cool, bro.
Bill.
Good story. Good story.
Speaking of LeBron, we're going to discuss him a little bit later in the show and his plans to end his career with the Lakers, but is that the right move for him in the franchise? We're also going to discuss the Suns and the Wolves shaking up their starting lineup last night. We'll do some overreactions and we'll do team of the night. But first, we got to discuss this Kyrie Irving news, Bill. Broke yesterday. He's going to be out 1 to 2 weeks. According to Shams, he's got a bulging disc in his back. He's 32 years old. He's having an all-star caliber season. But the Mavs lost again without him last night. That makes 5 in a row, and they are now 0-4 without Luka and Kyrie this season. They have plummeted to 6th, tied with the Clippers in the Western Conference. Not good for the Mavs.
Yeah, it does sort of. I hate saying game over in January because it is so early and we have seen teams get healthy and get right, and it feels like it's game over. I know the West has been a little underwhelming this year, but it's still really, really difficult to separate yourselves if you're not, I guess, the Oklahoma City Thunder largely. And there are teams that are beneath Dallas now, and we've talked about some of them, that I think are inevitably going to make a push. I mean, it's not as if trying to keep your head above water and win. What's a realistic outcome, even if it's just a couple of weeks, for what these guys can do without either of these dudes? Win 1 out of every 3 games?
You've got a lot of Spencer Dinwiddie incoming, a lot of usage rate for Spencer. Beyond that, I mean, like, Clay hasn't exactly been Clay all season. He's been intermittent, like flashes, especially when he played against the Warriors. You've seen little little sparks from him. But yeah, 0-4 without Luka and Kyrie this season. And then in their next 10 games, Bill, 7 of those are against teams in the playoff picture. So not exactly an easy schedule. You're hoping to get Luka back at the end of this month, but you know what? We're only a week into January. You still got to fade 3 weeks. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be a tough slog.
Warriors have been inconsistent, but you could see them playing well. The Timberwolves have been underwhelming. They're behind the Mavs right now. You could see them putting together a run of winning some games. I know I've been beating this drum for a while, but I still think the Spurs are capable of being even better than they've been. I mean, that's a team that I think could make a push. And look, it's not rocket science. There's no team in the NBA. There's not a single team in the NBA that can lose their best 2 players for any meaningful stretch and not have zero chance to compete over that stretch. And in the West,
it's tough.
Yeah, at least it's not a long-term injury for Kyrie, but it does just feel like another shot in the gut for a team that was already struggling a lot.
So as we record this, they are the 6th seed. They are functionally tied with the Clippers. They are a game and a half up on the Warriors and the Wolves, who we're going to get into in just a little bit, and 2 games up on the ascendant, your San Antonio Spurs. So, and
the Kings are on fire.
Well, you were going to get to those Kings. Like, they had a crazy game last night against the Miami Heat in double overtime. But yeah, all of those teams, I would say, have a better trajectory right now than the Dallas Mavericks without their 2 stars. And I think that's really something, when they have both of those guys, we've talked about it. They obviously won the Western Conference last year and went to the finals and had a really good season. And I think probably overperformed what a lot of people thought that they were capable of. Certainly what I thought that they were capable of. That whole team, the way it's constructed, is just like so centered around, you need, hopefully both of those guys, but at least one of those guys, right? Otherwise the wheels are completely off. And then it's just like a bunch of parts.
And producer Aaron points out in our private chat, and it's a point worth making, back injuries can be really problematic for any basketball player. But to your point, when you're in your 30s and you've been around for a while and you're by hoop standards, athlete standards, you're a little bit of an older dude. It's disconcerting. You're right. I was thinking about this. Is there a single team that could lose their best 2 players and still compete? And the answer is the Celtics and the Thunder maybe are sort of interesting.
The Celtics, I think maybe. The Thunder, if you're going to take SGA and Chet off, then all of a sudden Chet problems too.
I mean, Chet's already gone, but no team is going to be. Yes, this is a team that you particularly built around these 2 guys. We saw that it could work last year, and it's I don't think there's much of a margin for error, at least there is in the Eastern Conference, and I make fun of you with the Sixers all the time, but there is a margin for error in the East. You can be really bad and still be in the picture. There's not in the West, and I think that some of these teams are going to. I think like the Timberwolves come to mind, the Suns, who I want to talk about in overreactions, come to mind. They shook up, as you noted, their starting lineup. I think some of these underperforming teams in the West are going to play better in the second half of the season, and that coupled with the fact that these 2 guys are hurt, I think it's not game over for the Mavs. It's a giant hole they're about to climb into.
A giant hole. It's a bummer too for Kyrie. He's having an all-star caliber season. He's shooting a career best from 3. He's looked really good. He had been, he's had injury issues in the past, but he had been fairly durable over these last 2 seasons. And now, we'll see whether or not it lingers. And if it does, then I wonder, if he was going to be an all-star selection, who then replaces him there. All right. Point. So you mentioned the Sixers and the Suns. They played last night. The Suns decided to shake up their lineup. The Sixers are the get right team for everybody in the NBA. You got problems, go play the Sixers. The Suns ended up beating them on the road. Now, no Embiid last night, but PG, his shot. Bill, it's amazing how just going to Philadelphia makes people forget how to shoot. PG last year had a career best year from the floor and from 3, and this year his shot is completely broken. But anyway, the Suns were on a 4-game losing streak, had lost 7 of 10. They get a win. So they move Bradley Beal and Yusuf Nurkic to the bench, and they insert Ryan Dunn and Plumlee. And I don't know, this unlocks something for them somehow. I think it might have something to do with the Sixers, but moving forward, I think they're going to want Royce O'Neal. He wasn't available last night, but I think they're going to want Royce O'Neal in that starting lineup.
And by the way, Beal played well off the bench.
He played very well off the bench. 25 points in 30 minutes.
It worked. And again, did it unlock anything for the team writ large? Let me see them play someone that's not the Sixers. Did it unlock Bradley Beal in a sort of new and interesting way? Let me see more than one game in a game that's not against your Sixers. But it was an interesting, like, it's about time that the Suns did this. And I think we talked on the podcast yesterday, maybe Chris Finch is paying attention in Minnesota. Like, you're allowed to sort of, when your team's underperforming and you know there's something there, but you can't quite get your arms around how to mold it, you're allowed, Chris, to change things like the starting lineup. You don't have to play the same guys in the same rotations all the time. And like, maybe just like the freshness of it for the Suns, because they until recently, they had been nearly unbeatable with Kevin Durant. There is obviously talent on that basketball team. There's not a lot of depth there, but they shouldn't be. I don't even know where they are. 13th. They shouldn't be in the play-in, let alone outside of the play-in. I think they're 12th right now. Is where they are.
12th right now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
they're a game out of the play-in right now.
It's all bunched.
So initially, when I saw, because you and I were clamoring for the Wolves to make a change to their starting lineup, and they did tweak it a little bit last night. But initially, I thought, okay, the best unit for the Suns in my mind was still Beal, Booker, KD, Nurk, and Tyus. And then I went and looked last night at those numbers, and holy hell, that is not their best lineup. As it turns out, that unit is minus 16 net rating for the season among lineups with over 100 minutes together. It's one of the worst in the NBA, which blew my mind. I was like, wow, I can't believe how bad that unit has been. Simply swapping Bradley Beal for Royce O'Neal, that lineup goes from minus 16 net rating to plus 30 and a half in 74 minutes. So like, you go from
74
they in 74 minutes. So like, enough of a sample size that
that's legit.
It's considerably better. And maybe moving Beal, like you said, they're not a deep unit, right? So if putting Royce O'Neal or somebody, last night it was Ryan Dunn, but if putting Royce O'Neal into the starting lineup and moving Beal to the bench helps bolster a second unit that's already pretty thin, I don't know. Maybe, you're right. Like, they played against the Sixers last night, and report card incomplete here, but I could see the outlines of an idea here. Now, Beal was asked about it, and he said it was a little bit difficult. He wasn't given any indication ahead of time. He didn't think that it was coming, but the coach made a decision, and he's not going to argue with him. So, Bradley Beal's a pretty even-keeled guy. I've had the opportunity to speak to him quite a bit.
Oh, he's a great guy.
Dude. I'm sure that, like, as somebody of his caliber, of his stature, who's been used to being a starter since he was a kid, his whole life, that couldn't have been easy. But as these things go, he'd be one of those guys who I wouldn't expect to like make waves about it.
I mean, look, it's one time, but I was, as you do when you're covering the beat, I was on the beat once, and I was in DC back when he was there. I don't remember, several years ago. And I was at a dinner, and he was at the table next to me, and 3 drunken bleepholes would not leave him alone, to the point where I was just like sitting with Brian Windhurst and Joe Goodman uncomfortable watching. And I've never seen an athlete, a famous person, I've been on a bunch like you have, handle it with such sort of grace. And he is a very good chill. He doesn't get credit for that. He's a great guy. Let me ask you this question. Let's say that either the Suns or the Kings going forward, the Suns make some adjustments, the Kings just don't have Mike Brown, I guess, are markedly better going forward. Who are you kicking out of because those teams are both on the outside of the play-in? You've got, in reverse order, you've got the Spurs team that I love. You've got the Timberwolves at 9. The Warriors have been inconsistent at 8. The Clippers are at 7. Kawhi looked like garbage last night. And then obviously, if you get into the actual top 6 right now, you've got Dallas with the injuries, and you've got that Lakers team who are hanging at 5, but it's all bunched. Who would you kick out of there if you had to do a projection today?
Yeah, I think my answer is that I have 12 teams now making the playoffs in the play-in in the Western Conference. We did this before the season, and you and I were like, I don't know, who could we possibly keep out of this? I think I had the Warriors on the outside. I don't think I would have the Warriors outside now. The Clippers, despite the fact that Kawhi has not looked well, he looked okay in the first game and not great last night, but they play defense. They have an identity. I think that I'm circling right now the Mavs just because of the injuries. If one of those guys comes back, okay, you've got a chance. If 2 of those guys comes back, then they're going to be fine. If neither of them come back or are shut down for a significant period, then all of a sudden I could see them like free falling like a stone. I mean, they've lost 5 in a row. It doesn't look great. I'm still not all the way sold though on either, even though the Suns have made an adjustment and the Kings are hot with Doug Christie, and we'll do the Kings a little bit later. I still want to see more from both of them.
But they shouldn't be this bad. I like, okay, the Suns being a top 4 team, no. The Suns being, even though you're talking 2.5 games, the Suns being outside of the play-in?
Well, let's see. I mean, because again, I didn't realize how bad that lineup, that starting five was, and
I
how
didn't
just moving Beal to the bench and putting O'Neal like really changed the net rating by a significant margin. Like if Bud's gonna commit to it, then I think that could buoy them, and we'll see whether he will or not. We're gonna take a quick break, and then on the other side, we're gonna discuss another shakeup to a Western Conference lineup. I think Chris Finch was watching and listening to Beyond the Arc because we crushed him yesterday, and he made a little adjustment. We'll discuss that, and also should LeBron finish his career in LA, or should he maybe consider moving on eventually? That's coming up. This is Beyond the Arc.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale! Ronaldo! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. A reminder, you can get us wherever you get your favorite podcast. Please download, subscribe, leave a review. And then if you're listening on Spotify, if you look below the play button on the Spotify app in full screen mode, you can leave us a comment and tell us what you think. Bill, the Wolves, yesterday, like everybody else, we did a whole segment on what the hell are the Wolves doing and why won't they move Julius Randle out of the starting lineup and at least tweak it and consider it. He didn't do that. He didn't move Julius Randle out. However, he did swap out Mike Conley for Dante DiVincenzo, who DiVincenzo has had a really slow start to the season.
It's been rough.
Starting to come on a little bit here, Bill. And he played really well last night, 31 minutes. He had 15 points. He went 3 of 8 from 3. They won. They snapped the 3-game losing streak by beating the Clippers last night. So, it's not exactly what we asked for, but at least it's something new. It's a little bit of a tweak.
Yeah, I mean, I would like in Minnesota radical. Is it really radical change to move Julius Randle to the bench? It's not even a radical change.
It was
just
terrible last night.
Awful. He didn't play a lot of minutes either. I mean,
no,
he was sort of limited.
He was in foul trouble.
He doesn't work there. It has not worked. It doesn't work. We've discussed it nonstop. Maybe it will work better or work some if they move him to the bench. So we can talk. Yes, Chris Finch made that change, and I'd like to see DiVincenzo get right. I mean, it's sort of been overshadowed by Randall not being great and them being underwhelming and Ant being frustrated. Not even DiVincenzo was awesome last year for the Knicks. It was like a spark plug and a catalyst and it felt like that was the piece that I was most excited about when he came over. And so if he can get right, that's great. But Julius Randle he's been garbage this year. Not just garbage, and we discussed it yesterday. Anthony Edwards doesn't like playing with him and is put out by it. And it's all these passive aggressive signs. And he's frustrated. Get out of the starting lineup for 5 or 6. Just see what happens. Just test it.
Last night, Julius Randle played 23 minutes. As I mentioned, he was in foul trouble. He scored 5 points on 2 of 10 shooting. It hasn't been a good season for him at all.
No.
Maybe this is just like incrementally Chris Finch is going to get there. Like he can't accept radical change right away, even though you and I and Wolves fans everywhere are advocating for it. Maybe this is like a starter kit for change for him, right? He's going to go, okay, Dante for Mike Conley. And then eventually maybe he gets to Julius Randle and Naz Reid, swapperoo.
He better, because I'm not a Timberwolves fan. I have no skin in the game. I don't really care other than a sort of basketball fan. And I get angry now watching the ball go to Julius Randle and just that's the end of it's like that old Disney movie, The Black Hole, where they get sucked into look, Anthony Edwards is a bit of a ball stopper sometimes. Even at the Olympics, right? He was just like sometimes but he's Anthony Edwards. Like he should be, if the ball's going to stop with any player on that team, on that roster, it's obviously Anthony Edwards. I can't bear to watch anymore what that offense looks like with Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards on the floor together, especially when the ball inevitably makes its way to Randle, and then the offense just grinds to a halt. They were fun to watch last year, and they are brutal. They're a hard watch, John.
Yeah, they are.
Oh my God!
Did
you see this?
Yeah, producer Aaron has Julius Randle on his fantasy team, which is really a him problem, and you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, shame on you.
Watching Julius Randle, there were a lot of Knicks fans who were protective of Julius Randle because he looked good on that team, and you got a lot of offense out of him. But when he went down last year, that really unlocked a lot of different ways that they could play, including, as you mentioned, Dante DiVincenzo was amazing last year. And you had him and Josh Hart in the starting lineup for a big chunk when there were injuries. And he had a career best season. And I think, Julius Randle has been an impediment to a lot of players' growth. And on this team, potentially Anthony Edwards. I think Anthony Edwards is shooting a lot more threes
Yes.
and more efficiently than he has previously. But yeah, the ball stops when it goes in. I mean, it's obvious to anybody who watches that team what's happening.
I don't know Julius Randle at all. This is not a personal shot. I don't know him. I'm sure he's a very nice guy, right? In this business, sometimes you meet people and you like some and you don't like others. Guys you cover. Don't know Julius Randle. He has been a improvement by subtraction player literally every place he has ever played. Like, he is sort of alluring and he puts up these fantasy stats and then he gets hurt or he leaves and teams and people blossom. Not necessarily in hugely significant ways, pretty significant with the Knicks. And now I know he's not Karl Anthony Towns, and I know we've discussed that this move, this trade that sent Cat to New York and DiVincenzo and Randall to Minnesota, there's money involved and there's sort of other things beyond. It's not a basketball first move for this year for Minnesota, but he has made a really exciting team despite the absence of Cat. He's dampened that. He's a big part of the reason I think they're not particularly good. I discussed yesterday, we talked about Ant doesn't like playing with him. He's miserable. And I still think there's some immaturity in Anthony Edwards, that he's not a leader yet, able to handle these frustrations in a way you want. He's a young dude. He's still kind of getting the mantle of being one of the stars of the league on every level. Things that are his fault, Randall's fault, and things that maybe, all right, like you're playing with a young, immature superstar. It is a problem for the Timberwolves. And so for me, unplugging him from the starting lineup is the start of the solution to sort of test and see how much of a problem he is. And I think they're going to find out a big part of it.
As we continue here, producer Aaron informs us that Chris Haynes on Twitter has reported that a few teams have been informed not to trade for Jimmy Butler. So Jimmy Butler continues to be in the news. Tomorrow we're going to be on CBS Sports Network, and I thought maybe we'd do a little trade deadline preview, because we're less than a month out now, Bill, from the trade deadline. So I'm sure we're going to get into Jimmy Butler quite a bit on tomorrow's show on CBS Sports Network. So watch that space. LeBron James, Bill, this is something that we didn't get into yet. And it's something that we've been discussing, offline with you and me and producer Aaron. But LeBron last week, or recently rather, they're going to play the Mavs tonight. But recently he told reporters that he plans to retire in LA. And we're going to discuss whether or not we think that's a good idea or a bad idea for both him and the Lakers. But here's what he said to the media recently.
I think that's the plan. I would love for it to end here. That would be the plan. I mean, I came here to play my last stage of my career and to finish it off here. But I'm also not silly or too jaded to know the business of the game as well. I know the business of basketball, but I think my relationship with this organization speaks for itself, and hopefully I'll be going nowhere before my career's over.
Can I just real quick? My guy Mark Medina is in his grill.
Yeah.
I love Medina, but Mark, you can step back, pal. Just
I mean, you know how those scrums go. It's like everybody jockeying
the worst.
position, but Mark is good at that.
He is.
I'm of two minds here on this. On the one hand, the Lakers have played better recently. They're 20-15. They're fifth in the West. They're only a half game back of the Nugs for a home court first round playoff series, which would put them fourth. And I could see like the outlines of something with the Lakers. I think they're probably going to make another move at the deadline, but also like the ceiling probably isn't high enough to discuss championship with this team. Certainly not this season. And I'm going to guess probably not in the next couple of years. So if you're LeBron, don't you want to get one more crack at the apple, the championship possibility?
I'm going to spin it. And by the way, Medina listens to the show. So Medina, love for you, pal.
What's up, Mark?
He's a fan. I never told you this. He loves the show.
Fantastic. Love it.
I honestly think he wants your autograph. It's awkward when I see him at games. Like, oh, John! I'm like, all right, man, I'm on there too. I love Mark. I think it's a problem for the Lakers. I think LeBron has always been – he's been this massive Band-Aid that covers up for all of these mistakes and errors. And some of those, by the way, are mistakes and errors of LeBron's own making back in the day. But whatever. He was so good that he could make up for whatever mistakes or shortcomings there were. At times in Miami, there wasn't a lot of depth. In Cleveland, some of the moves they made, even with the Lakers in the bubble. John, they're not making an NBA Finals ever again with LeBron James. They're not. And this reminds me of he's a better he's a better basketball player than Kobe was in Kobe's last 2 years. But I was doing radio in LA and I was covering that. I was around that team a lot. It reminds me of those last 2 years with Kobe where they gave Kobe a bunch of money. And I understand the sort of almost religious zest that exists with Kobe Bryant in LA, and for all the right reasons. But that team was garbage. They basically paid him money for a 2-year farewell tour. They had a bunch of young talent that's not here anymore, right? Other than, well, D'Lo's gone, so they weren't here. They're not here, and it was Kobe's shine obscured the fact that you had to start over and you had to or rebuild in the sense of go get LeBron James and have him force Anthony Davis in. The Lakers have to have a post LeBron plan, and if he plays for 2 or 3 more years, I think he does it in LA. John, I could be wrong. I don't think he wants it. I think he likes living in Los Angeles, and I think he likes playing basketball. I don't think he's going to Oklahoma City or Philadelphia or Memphis or maybe the Warriors, but I don't think LeBron and Steph are enough. Do you? You put LeBron on the Warriors, whatever piece you have to move. There's
a lot of things at play here. Like when I'm saying, like if LeBron, if it's not going to be in LA where he could win a championship, wouldn't LeBron want to go somewhere else? But there's other factors here. It's not just basketball. And you're right, from the Lakers' perspective, from their end,
I wanted to
purely basketball perspective, you'd have to think like, okay, if we're going to make a smart basketball decision, it's probably moving on from LeBron sooner rather than later. But there are other factors at play here, which is that they're the Lakers and he's LeBron, and this is an entertainment product, and they're a perfect marriage in terms of like putting a product out there that gets attention.
I totally disagree. I understand the logic. I heard this with Kobe and 2 years, $50 million. How many games did they win? I can't even remember. The 20s? I mean, they weren't good. And again, I used to do this on LA radio. People got mad. I'm going to say something that's going to piss people off. But 2 things can be true at once. I was at Kobe's last game, and it was amazing to watch him put up that number that he did in his final game. He also took like 83 shots to do it.
Sure.
And it was the perfect kind of reminder of Kobe's greatness, but that game was about Kobe, right? And really those entire 2 years were about Kobe. And it cost the Lakers the opportunity. And it worked out because they got LeBron. They got the one bubble championship. But I don't know, man. I mean, there's a lesson here, and that is sometimes star power has served its usefulness, and it's time to transition to what's next.
Well, so here's my thing. I don't think it's quite an apples to apples comparison because yes, those last seasons of Kobe weren't great. LeBron, however, look, the Lakers are 20-15. They're 5th in the West. They're not irrelevant. Like, and by the way, LeBron his numbers are not terrible in terms of counting stats and percentages.
He's good.
24 points per game, 7.5 rebounds per game, almost 9 assists per game. He's shooting greater than 50% from the floor and almost 39% from 3. Those aren't terrible numbers. Now, his on-off numbers all season long haven't been great, although over his last 15, he's tightened that up a little bit and has played better, and they've been better with him on the floor. All I'm saying is that, like, isn't a Lakers team that's like, in the mix in the Western Conference where everybody that's not Oklahoma City, like, in a group, isn't that like not a bad?
This is okay. It is not apples to apples, but as I said, it's a better version of that Kobe thing. But Kobe is a reminder the Lakers will sometimes fall in love. They treat stars great, even after their star power doesn't translate to the court. This is the high watermark for the Lakers this season and for the rest of their time with LeBron. Because whatever LeBron is in the NBA, is he the 7th best player in the league right now? Is he the 9th? Is he whatever he is he the 13th? Whatever he is, he's going to be 5 lower next year or 10. And he's going to be 5. This is the best. He's going to be good. But what are the Lakers? They're the 4 seed in the West right now, but nobody, not you. Nobody's power ranking. If you were to power rank the West, whoever got in the playoffs, no one's putting the Lakers as the 4th most likely team to make the NBA Finals. I'm putting Denver ahead of the Lakers. I'm putting the Warriors ahead of the Lakers. I'm putting Memphis ahead of them in the standings. I don't mind this year. But if I'm the Lakers, I don't want LeBron James, because of those counting stats and that star power, to decide I'd like 2 or 3 more years in LA. LeBron's amazing. I think he's the best player of all time. But I think his continued presence of the Lakers after this year becomes detrimental in the extreme. You got to start to transition past LeBron.
Let me run one more devil's advocate thing past you, because you were saying like the teams in the Western Conference that you'd put ahead of them. Isn't there a non-zero chance? Isn't there some universe out there and all the different universes in the NBA multiverse, where Oklahoma City plays and you pick a team out of the hat in the Western Conference Finals, and that team somehow, because everything breaks right, is the Lakers? Isn't there? A
Yeah, I
small
mean,
chance.
yeah, the Atlanta Hawks made the finals a couple years ago. That they were never going to make the finals against. They got past your Sixers, right? Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen because I think
I
that
don't
you're
either.
right. The non-zero number for the Lakers happened a couple years ago, right?
Sure.
Yeah, Ja gets hurt again, and Houston's
Right.
too young, and
Mavs guys don't come back, and the
right.
Warriors can't get it together.
I mean, the West is a Rorschach test. You can look at it and you can see
Yeah.
whatever the bleep you I almost said the F word. Are we allowed? Whatever
Watch yourself.
John Gonzalez that thing. Whatever
Put it right back in.
You can see this crazy great Western Conference or terrible. What is Memphis? I'm not really sure because I don't know what Ja is going to be. What are the Mavs? We don't know what their health status is. What are the Warriors? We don't even know if they're going to make a trade. I mean, you just go down the list, right down the list. Is Phoenix? Are the Suns dangerous? Well, they probably should get in the play-in at a minimum first. Sure, some crappy team relative to the Thunder and the Cavs and the Celtics at that level can make the conference finals, I guess, this year. If it's a crappy team, relatively speaking, Lakers fans, if it's some middling team, excuse me, I don't think it's LA. I'll take Minnesota over them. I'll take the Warriors over them. I'll comfortably take Memphis if there's Ja over them. I'll certainly I already say Denver. I'll take Denver over them.
Yeah.
You've sold me on Houston.
Yeah.
I don't think the Lakers are that good. I just think LeBron and AD is really great and doesn't get the credit he deserves, and they're plugging along at mediocrity, just keeping the Lakers just locked into this spot that doesn't have any real upside.
I think 20-15, considering how difficult the West is
JJ too.
better, a little bit better than I would have expected for the Lakers. I'm just trying to give them their credit. Now, independent of whether or not he should stay with the Lakers, you know my position on LeBron. I want him to play until he's 50. Just because I love watching that dude play basketball. One day we're not going to get it anymore and we're going to miss it. And I hope we can get it for as long as we can. And to that point, he keeps breaking all these records. And Dave Levitan on Blue Sky had a tweet that or Skeet or whatever we're calling post, whatever on Blue Sky, just to put in perspective how amazing all of his streaks have been. So he has a streak, as you know, Bill, of consecutive games played with at least 10 points. That streak is now old enough to vote. It predates the announcement of the original iPhone by 3 days, and the streak alone has played the 37th most games in NBA history, which is more than Hakeem Olajuwon or Steve Nash. That's why I want that dude to keep playing forever.
All right, I'm going to meet you in the middle here because you're right, and it's a great point. And I think part of my frustration is everybody loses with LeBron playing for the Lakers for, let's say, 3 more years. And not just the Lakers, and they lose. So do we, and so does LeBron. Because LeBron I'm not sure what the historical comp is, but, the Tim Duncan figure maybe in Duncan's last championship with the Spurs where he played limited minutes, but he had some big contributions in the playoffs, but he wasn't I think Kawhi was the finals MVP of that team, and I think Tony Parker was still the best player. It's been a minute. That's not – LeBron is the 3rd or 4th best player on a team that wins a championship, but who wins you a couple games in every playoff series. That's never happening with the Lakers. They're not going to be able to build something in the next 3 years where LeBron can be this sort of 3rd, 4th guy who even comes off the bench or plays 23 minutes a game, but sort of LeBron's things when it matters. You could do that in Oklahoma City. There's a lot of places. It's LeBron. I'd love LeBron to play till 50 if he's going somewhere else. I'm the Sixers, but I'm just worried he's not going to do that. And he's just going to keep on being LeBron with the Lakers.
Yeah. My thing, Christmas Day when he played that game against the Warriors and Steph, and it was classic matchup between those two.
That was cool.
There's psychological studies about people who watch the same movies over and over again, because it's almost like a comfort food. You know what's coming. It's something that if you read the same book or whatever, something that you know what to expect and you enjoy it. So you're going to keep going to the well over and over again. Kind of like a security blanket for entertainment. That's kind of LeBron for me. I'm keep giving it to me for as long as I can give it, him and Steph, and just run the wheels off of that thing.
So he's the Big Lebowski for me.
Yeah. Any of those. I mean, I'm trying to think of what movies that would be for me, like the Fast and Furious.
Not Love Actually. As we now, I watch it every year at Christmas. I can't believe you have. All right, let me ask you this question about LeBron, because I think this is really interesting. Is LeBron James capable of not being the most important person on a team, taking the oxygen out of the room. Kobe couldn't do it even when he wasn't good enough.
That's the main question.
Duncan could. Like Dwayne Wade couldn't do it. Dwayne Wade's not at the level of any of those guys, and Dwayne's amazing, but Dwayne couldn't be that guy in Cleveland. Is LeBron capable of playing a role at 45 or 46 or 43 that is the third or fourth role, but valuable to a championship contending team? I'm skeptical that it is.
I have my skepticism as well. If he's going to play to 43, 44, 45, he'd have to. But I have a hard time believing that LeBron James, who, as we established earlier in the show, has got a greater global reach than King Charles, would be willing to take a step back and a diminished role. But keep playing, LeBron. I'm enjoying it. All right, quick break. And then on the other side, it's Tuesday, so we're going to do overreactions, including the Sacramento Kings Are Alive bill. That's coming up. This is Beyond the Arc.
Today, with the support of the NFL, a new playbook is being written. The National Gay Flag Football League provides inclusive play for over 4,000 LGBTQ plus players and allies. Here is a home with no penalty for being you.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. A reminder, you can find us on YouTube at Beyond the Arc CBS. Please hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe, and that little bell symbol. If you click on that, you'll get notified when we go live. Tomorrow night, massive game in the association, Oklahoma City at the Cleveland Cavaliers. We will be live on YouTube right after the conclusion of that game, so come and join us. All right, overreaction time, Bill. I'm going to start us off. I stayed up for the double overtime thriller last night between the Heat and the Kings. Bill, the Kings were down 17 in the fourth quarter. They come roaring back. They have now won 5 games in a row. DeMar looked amazing in the clutch. He helped them win that game. Keon Ellis, Doug Christie has tapped into him. I just want to say, this is the part that I wanted to bring up to you in terms of overreactions, right? Because I mentioned to Sam Quinn last week that I think that maybe the Kings are onto something here, and he said it was all fake. But on the broadcast after the double overtime game, right? All they were talking about was look at how they're hugging each other and the vibes and the body language. And I'm like, man, they're really laying it on thick about like how well everybody's getting along, wink, wink, basically saying, without saying it, that it was a Mike Brown problem in terms of the energy. Afterwards, Sabonis said, the belief, the energy, the vibes are at an all-time high. And then Malik Monk said about Doug Christie, he played before. So I think he knows how to say things to us a little bit better than people that didn't play the game before. Mike Brown somewhere hurling a whiskey bottle at the wall.
I like Mike Brown a lot. I think we hit this a little bit yesterday. He's considered a great guy. But we're not just seeing it with how well they're playing. They're saying it out loud.
They are saying it out loud.
Out loud. And this is a team that had real expectations. Not to be a top 3 team in the West, but I think it's reasonable that in Sacramento they believed, kind of like the Heat's perspective on themselves in this Jimmy Butler mess, the Kings believed that they needed to be a top 6 team this year and in the year. And they knew that was like challenging, but they thought it was very reasonable they could be the 5th or 6th seed. I think that was a reasonable goal. And they weren't anywhere near that with Mike Brown. And they are so it's like you're talking about a team that didn't just dislike the guy, or at least being coached by the guy clearly, but they feel like they were really underwhelming because of him. And the fact they're saying it out loud, that's not great for
didn't
Mike
have
Brown.
De'Aaron Fox for the last 2 of these games either. And when Mike Brown got fired, a lot of people looked at De'Aaron Fox and went, well, he must have done it. And De'Aaron Fox got his back up about it and was very defensive. And he said, look, I had a good relationship with him. I didn't have anything to do with this. But clearly, by what everybody else is saying here, they're not actually saying, hey, Mike Brown was the problem. But without mentioning his name, they are all talking about how it feels completely different in their locker room and how guys are getting along and they're hugging each other and the broadcast is only talking about it. In general, and you know this about me, I'm not really a body language vibes guy for most teams, but this is clearly a thing. I mean, if they're spending this much time discussing it, it's obviously a thing.
If you liked Love Actually, you would be, because you'd be more connected to those sort of emotional moments that Love Actually unlocks. Yeah, look, I am. I think it's really, really the science of trying to figure body. You're right. Nobody is. But vibe matters. The thing is, I think the reason a lot of people don't like it and why it's hard is it's hard to assess it, but it's really important. Vibe matters. Chemistry in the locker room matters. Leadership, all the garbage that's real, but you can't assess. And by the way, having covered teams day to day, it's hard to, you can do it, but it's hard to assess even if you're with a team 79 games in a year, and fewer beat writers still will write that, because if you write the vibe here sucks, those guys don't talk to you. And so it's hard from a distance, media fans, to really get your arms around it, because most reporters aren't able to be really overt about it. So it's refreshing to hear guys talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why it was so glaring on the broadcast too, because the Kings broadcast, right. Mark Jones.
Well, they know.
That's right. They're around them all the time. And that's all they were talking about. All right. Hit me with an overreaction.
All right, I'm going to go with the Pacers are back, baby. If we're doing overreactions, I know they beat the Nets last night, but they're on a nice little streak. And on this run, they've beaten, I think they've won 4 or 5. In 3 in a row, they've beaten the Celtics on this run. And by the way, they lost in the Celtics like 6 games ago. They've beaten the Heat, like whatever, like the Heat are a team you kind of need to beat if you're trying to make a move up in the East. They've beaten the Suns, who again are inconsistent. But I mean, there's lots of time. And if I'm going to come on this show and half seriously and half trolling you, tell you the Sixers can still plan a parade because all you need is a little bit of a run in the East to get back in the mix, it's true for the Pacers too. They are playing pretty good. This is an overreaction segment, so I'm not sure they're back, but it's worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, they're the 6th seed in the East right now as it stands. Yeah. They've won 7 of 10. That middle of the East is interesting because you've got a pile up of the Pacers, the Pistons, who are 500, and the Hawks, who are 500. So, yeah, those 3 teams have had nice little seasons, or at least the Pistons and the Hawks, I think, are overperforming what we anticipated. The Pacers obviously made the Eastern Conference Finals last year, so now they're like returning to form a little bit. All right. I got one for you here, and I'm trying not to be mean about this. I don't want to be mean about this. So I'm going to phrase it as a question.
Okay.
Why are the Bulls retiring Derrick Rose's number? So he had a little ceremony recently. His number 1 jersey is going to be retired. It's going to be the 5th jersey in Bulls franchise history to be retired. He's going to join Jerry Sloan, Bob Love, Scottie Pippen, and Michael Jordan. Now, he's beloved in Chicago. He's born and raised there. He was the rookie of the year. He made 3 All-Star games, and he's the youngest ever MVP. He had a very good run there until he got hurt. But he never won anything. And
okay, so I'm gonna defend Derrick Rose and answer your question, but I'm also gonna explain. I think it's a combination of the belovedness that you talked about and the awfulness of the Bulls, and they need something to celebrate. So I also have a soft place in my heart for Derrick Rose, and I may have told you this story, but I'll tell it again. When I was first doing TV work, and you know how this goes, you get these guys on cameras hard. I worked at another place in CBS. They wanted me to get a one-on-one with Derrick Rose. Not easy to do post-game, and our cameraman didn't show up on time. So literally I stood in that locker room and he got every person left. Derrick Rose was in his full I'm going home outfit, was walking out the door when the cameraman walked in, and the cameraman goes, do we miss Derrick Rose? And I'm like, I'm not going to bother. And he came back, waited 20 minutes, set up the lights and interview. All would just say, nobody does that for anybody, let alone some random media guy. Great guy. And I think in that organization, as I understand it, I didn't cover Derrick Rose, but I covered the Heat during Derrick Rose's time. And they obviously played Miami in the conference finals of that first LeBron year. And I was around them a little bit. You heard stories about that constantly. So I think he's beloved in the organization, right? So the people making the decisions sort of remember the memory of Derrick Rose. And you said this, but I'm going to repeat it. Youngest MVP of all time, and he will be the only MVP, if he doesn't make the Hall of Fame, and he shouldn't, in the history of the NBA to be a most valuable player and not make the Hall of Fame. And I think it speaks to what he should have been, but for injuries, and what the Bulls, I think, would have been. So I think some of it's Chicago
that team was
clutching. They were great, dude. I think Chicago I think they love him. I think the organization and the city love Derrick Rose. I also think Chicago is so poorly run and such a disaster, and just their abject
something positive
mediocrity. Yeah, clutch onto it, right? What a drowning man pulls down the people around him. I think that's part of what's going on in Chicago too.
All right. Well, you know what? You changed my mind. Retire his jersey. Give me an overreaction.
He's not a Hall of Famer, right? Not a Hall of Famer?
No, I don't think so.
And he didn't win a national championship because he missed those free throws. Right? So it's like I feel so bad for the guy. All right. I'm going to overreact. The Knicks are in trouble. I know there was no cat last night, but they've lost 3 games in a row, and it's an overreaction segment. And my main thing is, I think it was Miles Bridges who played like 43 minutes. I mean, you're losing games and you're burning through your guys. Well, like just so like again, this is an overreaction. I don't know if I actually buy this, but I'm sort of monitoring. You don't need to if you're the head coach of that team, you don't need to panic every game that you might lose and play your guys 40, 41, 42, 43, 44 minutes. And I'm still sort of Knicks skeptical that they are an elite basketball team. And I know that until this skid, their defense had been exceptional for a month, which had been the sort of question mark and Achilles heel over the course of the year. And the offense is obviously awesome. And when Cat's in there, they're a different basketball team. But overreaction is I'm back to being a skeptic on the New York Knicks.
As recently as a week ago, they were right on the heels of the Celtics. They were like a game back of them. Now they're 2.5 back. Yeah, they've fallen off a little bit here. I think, yes, at some point when you're losing these games, like take your foot off the gas pedal a little bit and like give these guys some rest in games that you look like you're going to lose. But this is us just banging our head against the wall that is Tom Thibodeau forever and a day, and he's never going to change. It's just who he is. He's never going to change. Should we do one more, or do you want to do team of the night?
Yeah, I got one more here.
You got one more.
You go.
Yeah.
I wrote down the word sucks. That's not true. Kawhi's washed. My total overreaction is Kawhi is washed. He's probably not. Here's the thing. He actually probably is washed because the combination of I'm not sure how reliable he is and the fact he's going to get hurt again. If you're going to sit out all the time, and I know he's only a couple games back, play well. I mean, if you're going to like take all the time in the world to come back, play really well when you come back.
It takes a second to knock off the rust, right?
Yeah, especially if all you do is collect rust all the time.
Yeah, you're just you've not weatherized yourself. Yeah, no, I mean, as I mentioned, they have an identity. At the very least, offensively, whether or not he's rusty or not, he's still a good defender in theory, and they are a good defensive team. So, in theory, adding him to that team should make them better defensively because he's another wing that you could throw and switch and. I like him on that end of the floor. It's just, what does he have left offensively? And so far, and is he going to be out there? Is he even going to be out there? So,
it's early.
All right. Last overreaction for me. You know how much I like the Houston Rockets, and I've been thinking about this for a while now, and I have decided they should trade Jalen Green. And I did a little bit of a deep dive yesterday. I'm out.
Working to this.
I have been. And at first I was like, well, sometimes they need offense. And he's like a guy who, even though he's inefficient, he can score the ball. But I really looked at his numbers yesterday, Bill, and it led me to the conclusion that forget about whatever offense he can provide you. It comes at such a cost that it's not worth it. So shooting from the left corner 3, 27%. League average is 38%. So well underwater there. Top of the arc. 31.5%. League average, 35.5%. Underwater there. At the nail, 31 and change. League average, 41%. In the paint, he's shooting 29%. League average is 43%. Bill, the only place that he's above league average shooting is at the rim and in the right corner. He's basically a massive drag on that team's efficiency. We know that they're not a good shooting team, and they're not a good three-point shooting team. And I think I found the reason. I think you ship him out while you can. He's still young. Get what you can for him. Maybe it's a, addition by subtraction kind of thing. Maybe you find some shooters somewhere out in the ether. But I just don't think long-term that Jalen Green is the fit there.
What is your temperature on Reed Shepherd, who's had the honor of being sent to the G League?
They just send him to the G League. Yeah. I like Reed Shepherd. You know that I overvalue what happens in Summer League.
You love Summer League.
I want to see what kind of numbers he puts up in the G League.
I'll push back on this a little bit in that I think the Rockets are, I said this yesterday, are so far ahead of schedule that I don't want to assess them as a team that is the second or third team in the West.
Leave them and figure it out later.
I think I'll let it incubate for the entire season and make evaluations heading into next year. And by the way, the Thunder did this, and then they made some decisions to unplug some guys, right, and bring some other guys in. But Presti let it bake for a while. When
I get that. I mean, they don't have to make a move. I just think like between Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green, both of them being super inefficient from the floor, I'd rather have Fred than Jalen. And who knows what you could get if you decided to unplug Jalen. Maybe you could find some efficient shooters out there. That's clearly what they need. And I don't know how they get it otherwise. All right, let's wrap up with team of the night.
I'm going Pacers. It's the Nets, but it continues a nice run of play for a team that, kind of like the Kings, minus firing their coach, have been underwhelming based on the expectations that had higher expectations because of where they got last year in the playoffs. So nice win, good to keep the momentum going. They're playing better basketball.
I like that for the Pacers. I have some friends in that organization, and it was kind of a little bit of a bumpy start for them, but they're starting to pick it up a little bit. I'm going to go with the Kings. Like what a little streak for them. I wasn't on board with them firing Mike Brown. I think he's a good dude, and I think he's a smart coach, and I didn't understand it, and I didn't think that it was a failure of Mike Brown. But Doug Christie, Doug Christie has sprinkled on this team, this fairy dust magic pixie dust that he's sprinkled on the team, has them feeling good about themselves. It's working. They've won 5 in a row, and they came back from 17 down in the fourth quarter, and all they've talked about is them and their vibes. So the Kings, by the way, now number 1 in our team of the night rankings. That is the 5th time that they've made it. First time for the Pacers making it on team of the night. But yeah, the Kings, congratulations.
Wow. Okay.
To them. Yeah.
If you were going to take the Kings, right? Underwhelming team that turns it around, feel good story, ensemble cast, right? Kind of like coming out of nowhere to capture the hearts of fans and making a movie, it would be Love Actually. And I'm going to keep hammering this. I cannot believe, look, Love Actually is either a modern classic or it is the Christmas movies version of Gone in 60 Seconds, which is a great, terrible film. Either way, you got to see it. Like, date night this thing.
My Christmas movie rotation.
Aaron's never seen either.
Is pretty cemented, and I'm also generally not a rom-com guy, but I've heard so many things about it that maybe I'm going to give it a chance, and we'll check it out, and I'll report back to you. All right, we're going to be back at it tomorrow. We're going to be on CBS Sports Network at 2 p.m. Eastern. And then, as I mentioned, we will be live on YouTube following the conclusion of the big Oklahoma City Cavaliers clash. That's going to be a super fun game. Bill will be on HQ, and then I'll be live on YouTube. Be sure to come and join us at Beyond the Arc CBS on YouTube. But for now, for our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, I'm John Gonzalez. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. 1 p.m. Eastern. I got it wrong. It's going to be fine.